In the House, it's Mike Hurst, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Let me play this audio to start things off.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, other distinguished members of this committee. I appreciate the invitation to testify today on this very important topic. From the outset, let me say unequivocally that no one should be threatened. But if someone is threatened, law enforcement should respond appropriately, investigate such threats, and bring those to justice who have violated our criminal laws. That being said, as American citizens, we must question whether our Department of Justice should be focusing its precious time and finite resources on threats against election workers when, in my opinion, there exists a much more dire and pressing crisis affecting the American public, and that is the rising violent crime surging throughout our country. Considering that the Department of Justice's task force, created just over a year ago to address threats to election officials, has produced only 5 cases and over 1,000 referrals, it has to be asked why this issue is such a priority for this department, considering that over the past 2 years, in 2020 and 2021, we have seen more than 6,000 additional people murdered in the United States when compared to 2019.
Did you ever wonder why you were there in the first place? Because this is so crazy.
It is crazy, Paul. The Democrats continue to have these hearings on things such as threats to election workers, which, again, is an important issue. But at the same time, when you're talking about threats, and I think the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, Ken Polite, who's from New Orleans, ironically, testified about threats and causing trauma to election officials. When you compare and contrast that again with those 6,000 additional people who were murdered in the last 2 years, it's not even a comparison. Why this department chooses to go after threats and make it a priority by setting up new task forces and putting all this manpower towards that when they're not really doing as much when it comes to violent crime. And at the end of the day, DOJ leadership matters. When I became U.S. Attorney, Attorney General Sessions made it a priority. President Trump made it a priority to bring violent crime down, and we did that. We were successful. But
it was working. You're right.
But if DOJ is absent, the criminals are going to run free, and that's what we're seeing around this country.
Doesn't this smell a little bit like the DOJ going after school boards?
That's exactly right.
It's a non-brainer.
Well, and it's not just that. Sending FBI to school boards, chilling free speech. I think about all the fire bombings and the graffiti and the harassment of our pregnancy centers around the country after the Dobbs decision, and even after the leak of the Dobbs decision, we had all of that, and DOJ is completely absent. They're not doing anything about it. They're not investigating it. They're not prosecuting it. I think we have right now one prosecution going on of the Supreme Court justices, the threats made against Justice Kavanaugh. But all of the protests in front of the Supreme Court justices' homes, DOJ is not investigating that. They're not going after those who are violating, Section 1507 of Title 18 of the United States Code. I mean, it's incredible that the way the Democrats and this administration has weaponized DOJ and has really made them a political arm of the Democratic National Committee.
Yeah, and one of the tools they use are those hearings. I mean, because what they do is they find out a politically sensitive topic, and they don't worry about the damn cause of the issue. They worry about how much political capital they can make from the hearings.
Right. That was what was frustrating. We had Chairman Dick Durbin from Illinois. Ironically, led this hearing and led all of these hearings where they focus on everything but violent crime. And I told Chairman Durbin in my testimony, I said, it's ironic that, I work in the city of Jackson. I tried to bring down violent crime, and we were successful in bringing down violent crime in the city of Jackson when I was U.S. Attorney. But it's ironic that now our capital city, Jackson, Mississippi, is the murder capital of the nation. Murder rate 3 times higher than Chairman Durbin's own Chicago, Illinois. So the fact that you're having hearings on threats to election workers when you actually have people dying on our streets, it's just unacceptable.
And think about this, because over the weekend there were 53 shootings and 7 more people killed in Chicago, and we're beating them per population.
Right.
That's not good at all.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to comprehend. It's hard to imagine that.
And the bad thing about this is we know how to stop it. We've identified the problem. I don't see any rectifying those problems at all. I don't see a coordinated effort. I understand people outside Jackson and in the legislature were working on this. But as far as the court system, holding tanks, stop and frisk, curfews, whatever it happens to be, we have no coordination whatsoever.
Well, and I don't know if many of your readers outside the Jackson area know this, but last week a jury here in Hinds County convicted a former Jackson police officer of manslaughter. That was a case where 3 officers had been charged, 2 had been tried, but the judge in the other case that had the 2 officers said there was no evidence to convict them. But unfortunately, one of the other officers was assigned this other judge, this very liberal judge here in Jackson, who, if you look at everything that was reported, seemed to have it out for not just this police officer, but all police. And that young man who was at the time a Clinton police officer, now very well respected in the community, he was convicted. And if you have the system rigged against our police, if you have the system rigged against our taxpayers, against the residents, I mean, you're not going to have anybody that wants to come to Jackson and police. You're not going to have a law enforcement left in Jackson if you don't have leadership in the mayor's office, if you don't have leadership in the district attorney's office, if you don't have judges who actually follow the law and do what's right.
The fact that you could have any modicum of success during your tenure with an unfriendly face in the mayor's office and administration was just makes it even more impressive.
Well,
let me say this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I looked at other democratically led cities around this country. One example was Kansas City, Missouri. My good friend Tim Garrison was U.S. attorney up there when I was U.S. attorney, and they had a Democratic mayor. But Kansas City was the city where they launched DOJ, again, leading from the front, launched this thing called Operation Legend. It was named after a young boy, a 5-year-old boy who was killed by a stray bullet while he was sleeping in his bed in Kansas City, Missouri. DOJ came up with this program, mobilized, many FBI agents, ATF agents, DEA agents, federal law enforcement to Kansas City, surged those individuals into Kansas City, and effectively cut the murders in Kansas City in half in a matter of 90 days. We tried to do the same thing here in the city of Jackson, and we were completely blocked by this mayor. We had the entire Democratic Republican City Council of Jackson unanimously in support of bringing Operation Legend here, but this mayor, for politics, not giving a damn about his citizens, chose to block that, making it a political issue.
Do you think the DA situation, the influence of George Soros, are we overblowing that? It just seems to me in other places, inclusive of Jackson, Mississippi, and the state of Mississippi, where George Soros has funded some DAs.
No,
is that having an effect?
Absolutely, it's having an effect. I saw I read about an editorial that George Soros wrote the other day, where he admitted that's exactly what he's doing. He's funding this so the laws will not be enforced, and you're seeing it throughout every single city or every single jurisdiction where these district attorneys who have been funded by George Soros, you see the violent crime exploding, including here in our capital city. So it's no coincidence of what he is doing, what he is funding, the choices he is making not to enforce our criminal laws. It is absolutely having an effect, and it's having a terrible effect for our citizens.
A friend of mine, and maybe yours, the Marshall Fisher sent me this, and it's of an old piece of paper, and I've read this before. I'm a student of law whose age is 85 years old. My first year of college was 68 years ago. One class I took was political science. Half page of my textbook essentially outlined a few steps to overturn a democracy. Number 1, divide the nations philosophically. Number 2, foment racial strife. Number 3, cause distrust of police authority. Number 4, swarm the nation's borders indiscriminately and unconstitutionally. Overburden the citizens with more unfair taxation. Number 6. Number 7, encourage civil rioting and discourage accountability for all crimes. Number 8, control all balloting. And number 9, control all media. What was printed in 1954 as a possible diabolic nightmare has become an emergency or an emergent reality.
Was that President Biden's class? Is that the class he took? Because that sounds exactly what we're facing now from this administration.
That is the curriculum that they're following. Absolutely. More coming up next. jump around a little bit here and there to pick your infinite brain.
You can pick my
Mike
brain.
Hurst.
I don't know how infinite it is.
Mike Hurst is with us, esteemed attorney in private practice now. You want to mention where? Or
Oh, yeah, Phelps Dunbar here in Jackson, doing all kind of fun stuff.
And preparing to run again, but we haven't broken that news. Oh, I just put a little fodder out there.
I will tell you a little fodder. Today marks the exact 1-year date from the primaries next year, August 8th. So I will tell you, Paul, my wife is actually running for office next year.
Really?
She's running for a new Mississippi House of Representatives seat, District 75, up in the Rankin County, North Rankin County area. So hats off to Celeste Hurst.
I have no idea where she'll find a campaign manager.
Yeah, we've got a lot of kids, so that should help.
Well, I always talk about resolve to get involved. So congratulations to her.
Well, she's committed.
Let me play this one thing here. Have you ever seen the libs of TikTok?
Yes.
They're copied and placed and posted on just about every other social media platform. But these are some of the most heinous individuals you've ever seen. Soulless, they make even atheists cringe. That cut on cats right there reminded me. These are the people that burn cats to the most part, or they're just looking and vying for viral. They want to go viral and they want some attention. But what happened was that Nancy Pelosi had the audacity, and this is about as low blow as her eyebrows are high. She actually used one of these, and she's going to present this on the floor of the House. And I'm thinking, could we get some closed circuit stuff on the actual process of what goes on an abortion and show you that if you want to shock people?
When I talk about it on the floor this afternoon, I'm going to show a presentation of what some totally irresponsible people are putting out there about little children, toddlers, learning how to use an assault weapon, smaller assault weapons, but a gun like mommy and daddy. Small assault weapons, but getting their muscles ready to be able to use it. Is that sick? Anyway, we're hopeful on our vote on assault weapons.
I just don't know how much lower this woman can go. She's saying that, and I guess she's saying this is such a dominant trait of irreversibly people with common sense out there, that they're raising a plethora of little kids when they're to get their muscles ready at toddler age so they can use an AR-15.
It's hard to comprehend. When I was in law school up in Washington, D.C., I took a class with some individuals who had never been around guns. And to be around individuals who have never grown up with guns, been around guns, the mentality is exactly what you heard right there with Nancy Pelosi. I think we should start educating our kids on guns a lot sooner than we do. I mean, I was educated in my home by my father. My kids have been educated in our home at a very early age. If you're taught to respect guns and you're taught, these kids are taught what guns are actually for, they're for hunting, they're for, defense, those things, I think you will have responsible gun owners. The problem we have is the ones who are not taught that, the ones who choose to use them for bad means. I heard someone, this whole gun control arguments by the Democrats, I read something where, it's just like a rock. Cain killed Abel with a rock, but David killed Goliath with the rock. The issue is not the rock. The issue is the individual. And that's what we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on the criminals, not the weapon of choice.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's what's in their hands. It's what's in their hearts. And then that's got to change one way or the other. To the point also, speaking of the abortion issue, the President of the United States of America has indicated two things. Number one, that he is going to call an executive order, is going to place an executive order as far as climate control is concerned. I have no idea what he's talking about, but he's got some money to do this if the House goes through with this bill. Number two, he has put in place an executive order on abortion that really legally, I don't know where it goes.
How will you be able to help women pay to cross the state line to get somewhere else where they need to go, given the restrictions of the Hyde Amendment?
So that is something that HHS will come up with the details on that.
But you're about to sign an EO. Have they not figured that out?
Well, we're going to leave it to HHS to come up with the details on the specifics on how they're going to work with states if a state asks for a waiver and what that's going to look like. So this is going to be in their purview. They're going to come up with the specifics again with the details on how this is going to work.
I'm not a lawyer here, Mike, but you're asking a non-elective agency of the federal government to interpret the Constitution.
Absolutely. And if you remember back during when COVID started, the president talked about him wanting to send out an executive order that would prevent landlords from continuing to charge, people who were renting. I mean, and he admitted flat out, it was unconstitutional, but he said, I'm going to do it anyway. So I don't think he cares about the Constitution. I mean, look at everything he's done in the last 18 months. It feels like 18 years, but everything he's done that he can't get through Congress, he's going to do through executive order, and it's creating and growing the deep state that we have with our federal bureaucracy.
What part? And I know you've been keeping up with the bill that passed the Senate yesterday.
It's incredible.
And it goes on to the House.
It's
what
incredible.
part of this scares you the most?
Oh, man, there's so much. I mean, the clips you played before I came on were exactly right. When you have Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders acknowledging and pointing out that even the CBO and other economic organizations have said that this bill will, in fact, quote, have a minimal impact on inflation. How can you say this is the Inflation Reduction Act when all of the organizations looking at it said it won't have an impact on inflation?
It's kind of like the tax increases in our state, or when we try to decrease taxes, you grab a few people that agree with you as far as economists. Let me just mention this: the people who said this will not work, other than Bernie Sanders, Lord help us. The signers of the letter were Nobel laureate Vernon Smith, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett, former director of Office of Management Budget, Jim Miller, former president Federal Reserve Board, Robert Heller, professors, University of Chicago, Princeton University, Duke, University of Virginia, Columbia, University of Notre Dame, and others who said this is a bad deal.
Yeah, and even the Tax Foundation said that this will likely close to zero impact on rating and inflation, and they said it may actually even worsen it. It would destroy 30,000 jobs, reduce economic growth. And you got to remember, Obama, Biden, the Democrats have repeatedly said, do not increase taxes during a recession. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. The Americans for Tax Reform put out this morning, Paul, that in Mississippi specifically, there are 58 companies owned by investment funds or partnerships employing almost 80,000 Mississippians, and they are the ones being targeted by this new tax increase. 80,000 Mississippians.
The clip I played coming in at 7 o'clock under Lion Eyes is he was talking about this 400,000. He's been talking about the 400,000 for 5 years, the same spiel. It was a good tweet that did kind of summarize the feelings, and the tweet was, I just want to thank Democrats for having the guts to give subsidies to people earning over $300,000. Sure, 65% of families living to paycheck, but more importantly, a hedge fund manager will finally get a chance to buy an electric Porsche for his side chick. Well, just as long it lasts.
Well,
300,000.
This is, he has pushed this Build Back Better bill for the last, 2 years. And what this bill is, Paul, is bumbling back broke. That's what it's going to do to our country. Yeah. That's what it's going to do to Mississippians. When you have everyone coming out saying not only did he break his promise of not raising a penny in more taxes for those who are making under $400,000, but if you look at the studies that have been done, over half of the tax burden from this bill is going to fall on people making less than $200,000.
That's exactly right. And the other thing, too, regardless of what you feel about big business, because I know corporations get they're going to do what they're going to do. If boards and stockholders and your IRA, whatever it happens to be how they are put together, when they retreat from investments, when they retreat from hiring, when they stop expanding, they withdraw, it hurts all the way down to the little guy. I mean, the middle class. That's when it starts, and the prices begin to raise on the customers, and it means that when he says it's not going to affect anybody under $400,000, it's not even a lie. It's a damn lie, and it hurts us all. Let's get final thoughts from Mike Hurst when we come back in a moment or two. Putting Democrats in charge of family financing, state or federal financing, isn't it a lot like having Hunter Biden do your daughter's itinerary overseas somewhere? It's not a good idea. Final thoughts, Mike Hurst coming up. We are in a race for deadliness by the time you put Chicago, Jackson, and New Orleans together. It's not one of those tour sites that you want to go on. One more.
Don't forget St. Louis.
Oh, man. It's disheartening what's happening there.
It is.
And I lost it here. What did he say? I thought it was good. Oh, Brian in Madison on C Spire text line. We have several of these. But Brian said, in 1985, I was in the 9th grade and took hunter safety in school. Part of that was on gun safety, not gun control. Well, the manly men in the media in Mississippi today would have their panties in a wad. If you even thought about that in schools today. So,
I think I took hunter safety in 7th grade, and we had the firearms at the school, and we shot in the schoolyard.
From what the board did, giving some leeway to have guns in the school. As a matter of fact, I read one. I guess I read it was I don't think I did. Madison County in North Carolina, South Carolina. They're putting an AR-15 in a wall safe in every room.
Well, and I will tell you, in Madison County, the Madison County District Attorney, Bubba Bramlett, a good friend of mine, doing a great job in this area. He himself, his office purchased AR-15s for our schools in Madison and Rankin counties.
How about that?
So
let me just say this again. Yeah. I don't want people to understand. That was in North Carolina or South Carolina, the story I mentioned.
Right.
As far as, but I have no idea. You're saying this also is going on in Madison County?
This is going on in Mississippi. Yes, they are training. Yeah. I was briefed Saturday. They are training those teachers, principals, administrators who want this safety training, and it's intense safety training. We're not just throwing people in there with guns. This is making sure that people, just like when the Pearl High School shooting happened years ago, the person that stopped that was an assistant principal with a firearm in his car. When, God forbid that happens, Mike, and you are in a classroom, the lights are off, you're huddling, kids are crying, you are a defenseless person waiting for somebody to come help you, then you pull that AR-15 down and have somebody who is trained. That's when we'll understand we've been screwing up in the past. That's exactly right.
Your final thoughts?
We've got a lot of work to do. I'm excited about the prospect of the Republicans taking the House and the Senate back over in the midterm elections here in a few months, but we've just got to get back to our principles. We've got to get back to our values. The Democrats have run our country into the ground in the last 18 months, but there's hope because we have good, well-intentioned people out there who want things to get better, who know how to make things better. And again, I think it starts with our conservative principles. We've got to get back to those principles and those values.
Did you have any thoughts on the insulin as part of this thing that split our delegation?
I haven't.
Roger Wicker, and have you checked on that?
No, I saw that, but I haven't had a chance to pull up the language and see exactly what that did.
It's a little. We'll go over it with Cindy Hyde-Smith coming up in a moment or two. Have we reached any agreement as far as with the city of Jackson on any plan that they have that you know of?
Not that I've heard.
As far as fighting crime?
Not that I've heard. And the mayor keeps talking about all of these police, law enforcement classes they've graduated. The problem is you have such attrition in the Jackson Police Department. The men and women who are there are doing a good job on the ground, but when you're supposed to have 600 police officers, Paul, and we have less than 250, I don't know how we can expect them to do their job well. They're doing the best they can, and they're in the fight. God bless them. We need to pray for them. We need to be there for them. We need to support them, but it's almost an impossible uphill battle.
I don't know how the people do it in Jackson. I really don't, because we're spoiled in places like Madison or around the Jackson metro area, on the coast, DeSoto County, and places like that. And some of the hometowns that have a good tax base, and you have good law enforcement, good schools, good hospitals. We are spoiled. You call because the most devastating, catastrophic thing in your life has just happened with a carjacking, robbery, mugging, and the police are not there within an hour. Sometimes they don't even show up. And then you go home and you find out just pour you a glass of water, but the damn tap's not working.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
when you
how do you
have
do
basic infrastructure that's not being provided to citizens, and not to mention all the waste being dumped into our creeks, our water systems, the Pearl River, that kind of stuff. Paul, let me one thing I think I may have misspoke. The AR-15s that were purchased by the DA, those were actually purchased for the school resource officers, the actual police officers who are assigned to the schools. I misspoke when I said it was the teachers, but they're still doing the training for the teachers and making sure the teachers, if they want to be armed, they can protect our kids.
Well, I just remind you that Mike Hurst is a lawyer, and he stated that disclaimer. I am completely void of any legal knowledge. Thank you.